I was 18 when I got married.
But it was not love. Your husband is a saint, and we must all cherish him for Russia's sake.
Romantic love will be the last illusion of the old order.
Have you known Count Vronsky long?
He's a rich, good-looking cavalry officer.
Dance with me.
So first of all, I want to talk about the fact that I am obsessed with the fact that this film is all obviously set on stage and it's such a cool, unique look. And I was thinking, all the great films you've been in, which past one would you like to see shot like that and kind of put on stage? And which scene in particular do you think would be kind of really cool?
I don't know. I suppose A Dangerous Method was originally a stage play, so I think you could definitely do that very interestingly. You know, I mean, this one, I don't know that that this is such a kind of vision and such a unique kind of piece. And actually, you know, as much as it is set on stage, and obviously that's Anna Karenina isn't set on stage, so it was a very specifically chosen location because it was all based on this idea that the Russian I can't even say it, aristocracy.
Right, it's a hard word.
It's a hard word. Of the sort of 18th and 19th century couldn't actually even speak Russian. They were, they spoke French, they dressed in the French style, they ate French food. Their houses were built to look like French houses, you know. So I think from that, Joe Wright, the director, kind of got this idea that they were like people who were playing a character.
Right.
You know, they were pretending to be this kind of French thing that they weren't. And so this idea of sort of basing it in a theatre kind of made sense
Right.
In that way.
Now, one of my favorite, it was just a quick little moment in the movie, is when you're laying with Aaron and you're kind of in the midst of the affair, and you have a quick line where you say, "Oh, so this is love." It was just such a beautiful moment. So obviously, you're a very happily engaged woman. What was that first moment in your life where you kind of thought, "Oh, so this is love"?
I don't know. I'm not sure, but I think, you know, in a funny kind of way, as much as it's a beautiful sentiment, it's also the tragedy of Anna Karenina, the character, is that she can only recognise it that once. She only recognises that initial spark, and she doesn't actually recognise it in other forms and at different times. For example, the love between her and her husband, she cannot see that it exists because it isn't that initial thing, which I think as a concept was actually incredibly interesting but incredibly tragic at the same time.
Speaking of tragic, you have a great balance in your career of like happy-go-lucky romances and then also kind of these tragic romances, everything from obviously Atonement in this film to the Pirates films and everything. Which one do you enjoy, or which one is easier? Do you get, you know, diving into that tragic love or the kind of happy, you know?
You know, I think the really exciting thing about being an actor is getting to change and getting to kind of do as many different things as possible. And, you know, I mean, I loved doing Anna Karenina. I mean, I loved the complexity of the character and the depth of her is so interesting. But saying that, I did get to the end of it and go, okay, I just need to do something happy and positive after that. So I've just finished a film about friendship and people making an album.
Perfect.
And it was a lovely antidote to the kind of the tragedy of Anna Karenina.
Let's say, because you go from the end of the world to Anna Karenina. My God.
Yeah, I know. I sort of realised that I died in pretty much every film that I made for like sort of the last 5 years.
It's rough.
It's rough.
Let's keep you alive for a while.
I know, that's what I thought.
Right.
I must warn you about something.
Warn me?
You may, by indiscretion, give the world occasion to talk about you.
This must stop. If you have any thought for me, you will give me back my peace.
There can be no peace for us. Only misery, like greatest happiness.
Oh, so this is love.
First of all, I'm just going to geek out. The idea of this movie being set on stage, it was kind of caught me off guard at first. I thought, well, this is kind of unusual.
Sure.
It's beautiful and amazingly done. And I just started thinking, you've been in so many great films. Which one would you like to see kind of redone and maybe shot this way to kind of see what it would look like on stage? And which scene do you think would look cool with it?
Gosh. Well, the work I did with Anthony Minghella has a very special place in my heart because he passed away and because he was a very good friend. You know, something like Ripley, Talented Mr. Ripley would be really interesting.
I'd love that.
And the jazz scene would be awesome, you know?
You know, I feel like one of the themes of this movie is this idea of what we're expected to do versus essentially at the end of the day what we want to do. As an actor, what is the difference between what you're expected to do versus what you just want to do?
Well, you try and marry the both. And you have to accept at some level, I think, that film in particular is a director's medium. Theatre is more of an actor's medium. So, you know, you're serving the director's vision, and when it's a vision as bold as this, when it's a vision that a director clearly has in his head and is kind of conjuring like a fantasy, you know, you're crazy to fight it. You've got to go for it, and if you believe in it, you just give your all. And you have to fight your corner if there's stuff, like you say, you want to do, that you want to, there's a reason you want to play a part, and you want to bring certain elements out of that part. And yet at the same time, you've got to serve the story. And there's no point, you know, bashing away at a sort of element of a role if it kind of beats up the overall balance of a storytelling, which is in the end what you're doing.
Right.
So it's a very collaborative art form, and it's a very collaborative process. You've got to listen to others, and you've got to also obviously know that your opinion counts.
Well, to give me the wrap, I just want to ask really quick. I'm sorry to geek out again about this, but like I told you, Road to Perdition is my favorite film of all time. And the very first time I ever told you that, there was an interesting moment where you kind of pause and you go, "That's a really underrated movie." And I agree with you. I actually think it's a really underrated movie. So I'm wondering why you think maybe it's an underrated movie. Because
I think it's got a resonance to it that wasn't necessarily initially picked up on. It's one of the few kind of gangster movies of modern time that sits very comfortably with the great gangster movies of the past. And it's got an amazing score. It's Tom Hanks like he's never been seen since or before. And I just think, you know, it's one of those underrated because it's not sort of considered up there, and I think it should be.
We are bound together by God, and this can only be broken by a crime against God.
Something's happened.
Not something, everything.
It would be a sin to help you destroy yourself.
Sensual desire indulged for its own sake is the misuse of something sacred.
The man who can't govern his wife's gone as far as he can go in government.
Anna isn't a criminal.
But she broke the rules.
Leave him.
Leave my life.
She'll be ruined.
Do you think I would let you have my son? You are depraved. A woman without honor. And this is what you want. Do you know what you want?
Whenever, obviously, you know, you've done now a period piece, if you can call it this, and then you've done modern day films. What's the biggest challenge for one versus the other? Is one harder to sink your teeth into versus the other, or is it both just kind of on page, just kind of the same thing?
I think it's all a challenge, yeah. You know, really, you just want to make it as believable as possible. But yeah, they are very different and vast. I think, you know, it's. I like what Joe has to say about period. Is that obviously we don't really know, and you know, we only have books and history to kind of research, you know, have up for our research. So therefore, it's a sort of fantasy. It's a dream world. It's something that we kind of imagine and create. We don't fucking know. So, so contemporary and modern stuff is obviously what we can take from our surroundings now. But that's also a challenge in itself, because obviously Generations is constantly growing and growing, and it could be dated by the time it comes out. So I don't know.
Well, one of the things I liked about your character is almost how willing and how quickly he was willing to just drop everything for love. Everything was second, a distant second to his love for Anna. Obviously, you know, you're a happily married man, you know, you're deeply in love. How willing do you need to be able to put all of this aside and put love first? Is that something that is a conscious decision, or is that something that you have to do?
Yeah, I totally relate to that. You know, I feel like doing that, you know. I feel like giving it all up and just running away, yeah.
What keeps you from doing that?
I think, you know, I've got family to support, so I think, you know, it's not as easy as like, you know, whereas these, I mean, he comes from a privileged background and he has a house in the country and the support, and, you know, probably doesn't need to do too much. But yeah, no, I totally feel like, you know, my priorities, my kids and my wife, and yeah, you do anything for love, you know, and you put everything on the line for it, I think.
And now, one of the things that I really liked about the movie is this idea that whether it's kind of 19th century Russia or today, in terms of like love and relationships, we haven't really changed that much. You know, we're kind of still having the same problems now that we have then. Is that a cool thing to think about, or does that make you feel bad about love? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it relates totally to now, and it did then, and probably way before then, and, you know, it's an animal instinct. It's, you know, how you feel. I think nowadays, though, we've lost, and then They lost an ability to kind of say how they really felt. You know, they were in a system, and that system said you couldn't do this, and therefore, when they did do it, they were shunned. And I think the same applies now, but you know, we're constantly being told not to say what we think, yet if we did, we'd probably be a lot happier.